Most new ball python breeders have no idea what a ball python breeding project actually is. They don't understand why it is critical for the success of their ball python breeding operation to use breeding projects. And even if they do understand what a project is, they don't know the difference between a weak project, a strong project, and they just assume that if they're working in projects that they are automatically going to be okay. But for this week's video, we want to talk about all of these different things. We want to define what a project is, we want to talk about why it's so important for your success, and ultimately we want to get into some of the different types of projects, and finally, what makes a weak project and what makes a strong project. So we hope you guys enjoy the video. If you do, please don't forget to hit the like button, leave a comment, and subscribe. But my name's Steven with Leviathan Snakes, and let's jump in. To kick all of this off, let's imagine that you are scrolling on Instagram right now. And as you're scrolling, you see somebody is getting out of the hobby and that they've posted up a list of all of the animals that they have available. So you go into it because maybe they might have some really cool breeder female that will help you jumpstart your progress. And when you open up the list, there are a bunch of random animals, and based off of what you are seeing on the outside, you have no idea how these animals were supposed to work together. You don't know exactly what were they trying to achieve with all of these different animals. And I think that this sign, when you are on the outside looking in at somebody else's collection and you have no clue what they're trying to do, I think that this is a sign that they either are not using projects to establish their ball python breeding operation, or their projects are very, very weak to the point where there's no clear direction in it from somebody on the outside. The reason why projects are so important is that projects help you maximize your effort and your investment in order to get the best results possible. So if you have a bunch of animals and none of them really work together, when you end up producing the offspring from those animals, those offspring also are not going to really fit into any specific project. And because they don't fit into any specific project, and it's just a bunch of random assortment of animals, they're probably going to have a very, very weak demand when it comes to the marketplace. Maybe you'll be able to sell them to pet owners, maybe you'll be able to sell some of the animals to like newer breeders, but when it comes to people who have experience and know what they're doing, they're looking for very, very specific animals with specific genes in order to progress their projects. And if you don't have that in mind when you are building out your ball python breeding operation, there is very, very little chance you're going to be able to consistently make those types of animals that those other breeders are going to want. And if you do make them, it's going to be really kind of completely by luck and by chance. By organizing your ball python breeding operation into specific projects, you are able to very, very clearly define a direction for your entire ball python breeding operation. And you know that this season you need to make these specific double hets. And then the next season you might be able to make some combo visual hets. Maybe the season after that, now you're making some combo double visuals. And as you progress, and your projects get stronger and stronger and stronger, oftentimes those animals get more and more and more in demand. And when there's more demand for those specific animals that you're creating, the prices get higher and you're able to kind of level up throughout the ball python breeding hobby. But if you are not using projects to work your ball python breeding operation, what ends up happening is you make a bunch of animals that don't really progress any specific projects, and because they don't really progress any specific projects, they are really only viable to people who are just starting out their project because it's kind of like entry-level stuff, or to other pet keepers. And there's nothing wrong with either one of these markets, but it is going to be very, very hard to turn a ball python breeding hobby into a ball python breeding business, a full-on business that supports yourself and your family, unless you have a vision and unless you are deliberately planning out how you are going to progress in the hobby years in advance. At a high level, I feel like projects are just simply a group of animals that are all working together so that way their future generations can progress you towards a specific goal. But I also feel like that there are different kinds of projects and there's different ways that you go about working different kinds of projects. The very first type of project that we want to talk about are the dead-end projects. And dead-end projects are honestly fairly fairly negative, and I don't recommend most people going after a dead-end project. But that doesn't necessarily mean just because a project is at a dead end right now, that 3 years from now, there might be a brand new combo that comes out that somehow is able to bypass the dead end that was stopping everybody else from progressing in the project. And if that happens, you might be able to turn a dead-end project back to a thriving project, but for now, we just want to talk about as if there is just a dead end in it. So, the thing that makes dead-end projects different than other projects is that once you hit whatever the goal type of animal is, maybe this is a specific morph, maybe it's a specific combo, there is pretty much nothing else you can do beyond that. So maybe it's a genetic issue that's preventing the desired outcome of that project from producing babies in the future. So an example that I can give on this is the scaleless project. So you compare a scaleless head to a scaleless head and make a fully scaleless snake, but in the entire time that it has been in existence, there hasn't been a fully scaleless female on eggs that's been verified. I think there's been one specific person last year or so said that they had a fully scaleless female on eggs, but honestly, I've never heard anything else from it, and I never actually saw any proof that that specific female was on eggs. So even if that one female was on eggs, all of the other hundreds or maybe even thousands of scaleless snakes that have been created, none of the other ones have laid eggs on the female side. So because of this, once you get a fully scaleless female, you're done. There's nothing else you can do beyond that, so there is a dead end in the project. Now, you technically could still keep working that project by only using scaleless head females or only using the males, but for the most part, once a project gets a dead end like that, it kills the momentum of the entire project. And yes, it is technically possible to keep working that project, but for the most part, I feel like that once something like this happens, there is not really much room in the ball python breeding community because there are so many other genes and other projects and other amazing combos that don't have that limitation that most breeders end up losing interest for that project. Now, the people who do work a project like this that has a dead end, I feel like that oftentimes they are knowingly going into it with that dead end in mind, and either they are trying to avoid the dead end or they are trying to find a way to fix the dead end. So oftentimes in this specific situation, you're not necessarily going to be holding back the scaleless females. Instead, you're going to be looking to hold back combo scaleless head females. That way you can keep progressing your project. But I don't think most people should be working dead end projects. Next one that I want to talk about are dinker projects, and dinker projects are also something that I think most people probably shouldn't work because there is a huge risk that you will put in tons of years, tons of time, tons of effort, tons of money into a dinker project and get absolutely nothing out of it. So a dinker project, just for anybody who's new to the hobby, is when you have an animal that has a weird phenotype, it has a weird appearance, and whatever that appearance is. And the breeder wants to know whether or not that specific appearance is inheritable to the offspring. And if they can prove that it is inheritable to the offspring, they can prove that it's different than all of the other established genes on the market, and they can prove that it's cool, you can get really, really insane high dollar prices for the animals with that brand new gene on the market. So because of this really, really potentially high but incredibly risky reward, a lot of people pursue dinker projects. So when it comes to the dinker project, we kind of already talked about like what the goal is, and that is the very first thing is you have to be able to prove that that appearance, that phenotype of whatever the weird animal is inheritable to the offspring. So you got to breed it, and oftentimes when you breed it, you don't want to breed it to something that has a ton of other genes in it, because if it has a ton of other genes into it, initially it's going to be very, very hard to tell if that gene actually did pass on to the babies. So instead, a lot of times people will pair a dinker to a normal or maybe a single gene recessive like a clown or a pied or something like that, so that way you can very clearly see here are the normal babies and here are the babies with whatever the weird phenotype is. And this is probably the first step that most people do when they are trying to prove out a dinker gene. The second step is to prove that that specific appearance, even if it is inheritable to the offspring, isn't just one of the other genes that already exist. And previously, the way that we went about doing this was that you would breed that animal to a bunch of other different combos, so that way you could show a Dinker gene plus pastel, a Dinker gene plus Mojave, a Dinker gene plus clown, and based off of that, you could look at the other genes that are similar in appearance to the Dinker gene and look at their combos. And if there's a big enough difference in enough different combos, people would previously accept that it was a brand new gene. But now with genetic testing, I think that this stage actually changes completely. And instead of having to breed it to a bunch of different combos, though I do think that that step is still going to come into the Dinker process, instead people can send in the Dinker gene shed to Rare Genetics Incorporated through Morph Market or on Clutch, and they can test it genetically for any other morph that is similar to that Dinker gene. So if you have a very clean, reduced, banded type animal, you could send in that banded Dinker gene into RGI and test it for Inchy. You can test it for Orange Dream, and if it comes back negative for those, that's a very, very strong sign that it is not, genetically at least, Inchy or Orange Dream, and because of that, you can kind of prove that it's not a gene that already exists in the market. The last stage of a Dinker project is people making new combos with that Dinker gene and proving that it looks absolutely amazing. Because if you can prove that a Dinker gene is inheritable, it's different than anything else on the market, and it makes beautiful snakes, that is all three aspects that you need in order to make a Dinker project successful. And I think that there are some people who get Dinker genes and the Dinker gene is so subtle, there's like a little teeny tiny dot right below the eye or something like that, and they say that that is what makes the Dinker gene. But when you put it in combos, it doesn't really do anything else to other combos, and because of this, that's not really going to be a viable project. So, in my opinion, I think that people who work Dinker projects, they specifically should shoot for Dinker animals that are completely different appearing than a normal ball python. Again, it might not prove out to be genetic, but if it is so subtle that it is almost indistinguishable with a normal ball python, it is going to be very, very hard convincing the entire reptile hobby that it is worth whatever investment that you are going to charge for that specific project in the future. Third project that we want to talk about are limited projects. And limited projects are honestly, in my opinion, some of the best projects in the entire market because they are not super hard to do. They often are fairly inexpensive and they can make some absolutely beautiful, amazing snakes. So I think that the most popular limited project is the blue-eyed leucistic complex. So specifically making bells. So a bell is an all-white snake with blue eyes. But the problem with the bell, and this is why it makes the entire project limited, is once you get that bell, there's not really any other genes you can add into the bell and make it any different or make it any better because it's already like the peak optimal appearance for that specific project. And because of this, because you can pretty much hit your goal and then that's it, the project's done. And while it can make a beautiful animal that a lot of pet owners want to buy, oftentimes breeders are not big fans of limited projects because they know once they hit that end goal, they're done. Like they could keep making more of that end goal, but there's nowhere else to go. So because of this, I think that good, strong, limited projects do great in the pet market because they're easily replicatable and they're absolutely beautiful. And because of this, it ends up driving the prices down to the range where pet owners can't afford them. But when it comes to breeding an entire ball python breeding operation, there's not really much room you can go once you hit that specific end goal. The fourth type of project that I want to talk about are probably the vast majority of ball python breeding projects, and this is when somebody is trying to replicate a specific combo. So I think probably the most famous of this are either the Batman or the Pompeii. So in this specific situation, breeders are getting the ingredients that they need in order to hit the end goal. So if we're looking at the Batman, maybe they're going to get a leopard clown and a spot-nosed clown, and they're going to put them together, and then hopefully in the offspring they hit Batmans. And then once they hit a Batman, that is their project, that's their goal. Oftentimes, once they end up getting that goal, they don't just quit and they stop making combos, but they want to add in another gene into the Batman. Maybe it's yellow belly, maybe it's special, maybe it's something like this. And because of that, they keep progressing the project forward and forward and forward, and the project stays alive. And I think that this right here is probably the most important factor to a ball python breeding project when it comes to the breeder side, is that there is room to keep going and make other absolutely amazing snakes that are within one specific project. The last type of project is the leading edge projects in the ball python breeding hobby. And the leading edge projects are people who are taking animals, whether it is maybe a really, really rare new gene, or it's a multi-recessive animal that has very, very few in existence. And they are trying to make brand new stuff that has never been hit before. And maybe it looks absolutely amazing and it can inspire the entire hobby where other people start chasing that specific project, or maybe they put these animals together and they find out that that is absolutely not the direction that you want to go with it. But the leading edge projects, in my opinion, are all about exploration, and it's about trying new things. And I think that it is a really, really fun side of the hobby, and pretty much everybody that people look at as the leaders of the hobby, these are the types of projects that they are doing. They're not necessarily just trying to replicate something else that somebody else had hit. Instead, they are always trying to push the envelope forward and progress the hobby into the future. Now that we have all of the different types of projects out of the way, I want to talk about what makes a strong project, what makes a weak project, and at what point do you just have random animals and you don't actually have a project at all. So to start it off, let's start on the latter one. When do you not actually have a project? So let's say that you want to work the sunset clown project, and you have a sunset and you have a clown, and you are going to breed them together and make, hopefully, double hets. You're going to hold back the females, and maybe you're going to go buy a clown het sunset male in the future. And then once those females are up to size, you're going to pair that clown het sunset that you bought to the double het sunset clown females, and hopefully you end up hitting some sunset clowns. At this point in time, that is a plan to get into the sunset clown project, but when you only have the sunset and you only have the clown, they're not actually in the sunset clown project yet. You have to work your way into it. So the reason why this is important is if all of your projects are like this, and you end up realizing that you're not actually making, because maybe the female doesn't go, you're not actually in that sunset clown project yet. So if something comes up and somebody were to look at your collection and they see that you have a sunset, a clown, maybe a desert ghost, maybe a pied, maybe a genetic stripe, and they don't know what your plans are, they don't see any specific through line. But instead, if you had 3 double het sunset clowns and a clown het sunset in your collection, they would very clearly see, oh, those specific animals, those 4, they're all working together for one common goal. So when it comes to all of these different things, I think that if almost all of your projects are how I just described, I think that you are in a very, very weak, vulnerable position, because for the most part, you are not going to be producing animals that are going to be very, very in demand. So going one step beyond that, personally, I think when it goes into the multi-recessive projects, double hets are the weakest. And technically that's not actually true. It would be like pos double hets or pos hets would be the weakest form of a project. If you had a pos double het male to a pos double het female, that's the weakest form of the project. But with genetic testing, I personally think that that's probably going to be a thing of the past, and nobody's going to be, very much at least, really breeding pos double hets unless they have already tested them and they know for a fact that they have the genes in them. But anyways, beyond that, we'll say that the weakest level of a multi-recessive project is double het to double het. And the reason why this is the weakest is that the odds to hit the desired outcome in this specific situation would be 6% per egg. So that means that the vast majority of the clutch isn't going to be the animal that you specifically want to hold back. And because the vast majority of the animal are going to be, let's say, pos double hets, they're not going to have very much value. And if that's what you're trying to sell, it's going to be a very, very hard sell to other people to buy them when they can just go buy a 100% double het, or they can go buy a visual het for whatever project that you're specifically wanting to work. So even though you could make, in this specific situation, a sunset clown from a double het to a double het, almost all of the other babies are not going to be anywhere near that level. So overall, that specific project, if it's double het to double het, is fairly weak, though you could hit your desired outcome. So taking it up a level, if you have a visual het to a double het, you're making your project just a little bit stronger. And because of this, because one of the animals is a visual recessive, it guarantees that all of the offspring from that specific pairing will carry at least one copy of that recessive, so all of the babies are going to be 100% het at least. And it doubles your odds to hit both just any visual with that specific recessive, and it doubles your odds to hit the double visual. So because of this, because you are increasing the chances to hit the desired outcome, and you are increasing the number of higher level byproduct, overall it is increasing the strength of that specific project. Going up another level, you could have a double visual to a double het, and now you're looking at a 1 in 4 shot to make another double visual, and again, subsequently, it's doubling all of the other odds, and you are guaranteeing with a double visual to a double het, every single baby will at least be a double het. So again, you're upping the odds, you're upping the probability of getting what you want, and you are guaranteeing that the lowest level offspring are even better than they were before. So this is how you kind of level up a project. But if you are working, let's say the Sunset Clown project, and you just have a clown het sunset to some normal double hets, you're probably not going to be pushing the project forward because the Sunset Clown has already been hit. But if instead you have other genes in them, if you had a yellow belly clown het sunset to an asphalt double het, you could potentially make the very, very first freeway sunset clown, which would be, I'm sure, absolutely amazing. And this is how you can really jumpstart your project. So that way you're not just inching on little by little and slowly falling behind. You are actually leapfrogging all of the other players, and you're making brand new stuff and making your ultimate project even stronger. Instead of progressing to the sunset clown, which then would just take you into the next stage, you get to bypass the sunset clown and go all the way to the freeway sunset clown. And then again, it makes you much, much stronger in the future. So my advice when you're trying to level up your project and you're trying to make them stronger is you need to control the odds as much as possible. If you have a double het to double het, you only got a 6% chance. But if you have a double visual to a double het, you got a 25% chance. If you have a double visual to a visual het, you have a 50% chance. And if you can go double visual to double visual, you have a 100% chance that the worst baby you will make is another double visual. But if you have other genes in those combos as well, those other genes are going to let you leapfrog the actual project and really, really push it forward. So, in my opinion, when you're trying to build out your projects, you really, really should try to go to increase the odds as much as possible and bring other genes into the project immediately, because it takes the exact same amount of time to grow up a normal double het versus a combo double het. So just simply getting those genes into your double hets to begin with will drastically help you out later on down the line. So I know this was a little bit of a longer video. Hopefully it was useful, and if it was, please don't forget to hit the like button down below, leave a comment and subscribe, but we will see you next time.